Moonlight dappled the overgrown grass and cast eerie shadows on the tombstones. The air was thick with a kind of stillness that made my skin prickle. In a group of curious teenagers, I was the skeptic, the one who thought it was all nonsense. But here I was, shivering in the moon's cold embrace. The grave was marked by a headstone unlike any other, etched with a symbol that sent shivers down my spine. We formed a circle, awkwardly chanting the incantation we'd found in an old, tattered book. Each word trembled on our lips as we invoked spirits from realms we barely understood. Then it happened. A silence so heavy it seemed to press against my chest. The earth beneath the enigmatic grave trembled. The ground cracked open as if some ancient force was clawing its way out. A ghastly glow seeped through the cracks, casting ghoul-like shapes across the tombstones. Fear gripped me, urging me to run, to escape the nightmare I had unwittingly walked into. But I was frozen, a helpless witness to the unfolding horror. A skeletal hand, fingers like bone-white claws, reached out from the depths, followed by a figure clad in rags. Its hollow eyes fixed on us, and I felt its malevolent presence like a physical weight. My friends' terrified screams filled the air, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the figure before us. It spoke, a voice that seemed to echo from ages long past, demanding payment for disturbing its rest. Panic surged within us as we struggled to undo the incantation. But the figure's anger grew, its presence suffocating us. It was a relentless force, ancient and vengeful. In the chaos, my voice rang out, offering an apology, begging for forgiveness. Time hung suspended as the figure considered my words. Slowly its gaze softened, and the unearthly glow receded. The ground trembled once more, and with a mournful sigh, the grave closed, swallowing the figure whole. We stumbled back, shaken to our cores. The legends were no longer just tales. We had crossed a line, trespassed into a world beyond our comprehension. As we left the graveyard, a newfound respect for the unknown settled in my heart. Some things were better left undisturbed, and that night, I learned the hard way that the boundary between life and death was not to be trifled with. The moon hung heavy in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the gravestones that stood like silent sentinels. The air was thick with an oppressive chill, the kind that worms its way under your skin and nestles deep within your bones. I had heard rumors, of course, tales whispered in hushed tones about the grave that had a mind of its own. But I was a skeptic, dismissing those stories as the products of overactive imaginations. Curiosity got the better of me as I approached the grave that everyone spoke of. It was marked by an old moss-covered headstone, the name eroded by time, leaving behind only an unsettling void. The night seemed unusually still as I stood before it, my breath forming misty clouds in the frigid air. It was then that I noticed it, a subtle vibration beneath my feet, so faint that I almost dismissed it as a trick of my imagination. But as the ground trembled with increasing intensity, there was no denying it. I stumbled back as the earth cracked open, a sinister fissure snaking its way towards the grave. A cold sweat trickled down my spine, and a sense of unease settled deep within me. A surreal light spilled forth from the gaping chasm, bathing the headstone in an eerie glow. The air was heavy with an otherworldly presence, a malevolence that seemed to seep from the very earth itself. And then, from the heart of the earth's embrace, emerged a skeletal hand, fingers like bony talons reaching for the moonlit sky. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched in paralyzed horror. With agonizing slowness, a figure rose from the depths, a figure dressed in tattered shrouds that billowed like ethereal tendrils. Hollow eyes fixed upon me, their gaze an icy grip on my soul. The grave had yielded its secrets, and what stood before me was a nightmare given form. The figure's lips parted, and a voice that seemed to echo from beyond the veil of death itself filled the air. It spoke in a language I couldn't comprehend, its words a chilling symphony that resonated within my very being. Dread knotted my stomach as I realized that I had trespassed into a realm beyond mortal understanding. The figure's gaze bore into me, and a single word clawed its way into my mind. Wanderer. It was a warning, a condemnation for my intrusion into the sacred domain of the dead. I stumbled backward, my legs unsteady, my thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. The chasm began to close, the unearthly light fading, but the haunting image of that figure remained etched in my memory. As I stumbled away from the cemetery, my heart racing, I knew that I had witnessed something beyond explanation. The grave that opened alone was no mere tale. It was a portal to a realm where the living should never tread. And as the night swallowed the whispers of the graveyard, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had glimpsed into a darkness that should have remained forever hidden. My friends and I gathered with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. We had heard whispers about an ancient summoning ritual, a way to bridge the gap between our world and the realm of the supernatural. We thought it was all just a game, a way to add some thrill to our mundane lives. Little did we know what horrors awaited us that night. A clearing lay before us, a natural amphitheater in the midst of the dense woods. Armed with candles, chalk, and a book of incantations we found online, we began to draw the summoning circle, an intricate design that glowed with an eerie light as our hands worked to complete it. Laughter and nervous chatter filled the air as we lit the candles and recited the words, our voices trembling in the silence of the forest. As the final words left our lips, a sudden gust of wind rustled the leaves, sending a shiver down my spine. The air grew still, heavy with a sense of anticipation that seemed to hum beneath the surface. My heart raced as I looked at my friends, their faces a mix of excitement and uncertainty. We exchanged uneasy glances, wondering if we were truly about to conjure something beyond our understanding. A strange energy seemed to envelop the clearing, a palpable tension that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. Just as doubts began to creep in, a soft whisper carried on the wind reached our ears. Unintelligible words that seemed to echo from all directions. Panic flickered in our eyes as we searched for the source of the sound, but there was nothing to see, only the shadows cast by the dancing candlelight. Then, it happened. The earth beneath our feet trembled as a figure materialized within the summoning circle. My heart seized in my chest as I stared at the entity before us. Its form was indistinct, a swirling mass of shadows that seemed to defy the laws of reality. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and a sense of dread settled like a heavy weight in the pit of my stomach. The figure spoke, its voice a chilling whisper that resonated in our minds. It spoke of ancient pacts and forbidden knowledge, promises of power and secrets that could unravel the fabric of the world. Fear coursed through my veins as I realized the gravity of what we had done. We had opened a doorway to a realm we were never meant to enter. Desperation gripped us as we tried to break the circle, to undo the summoning. But the figure's presence was suffocating, its power unrelenting. Our voices trembled as we begged for release, for forgiveness. The air grew heavy with a malevolence that seemed to seep from the very earth. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure dissolved into the night, leaving us gasping for breath and trembling in the aftermath of the encounter. The forest was once again silent, the only evidence of our folly the fading glow of the summoning circle. As we stumbled back from the clearing, our faces pale and our hearts heavy, we realized the consequences of tampering with forces beyond our comprehension. The summoning circle had opened a door to a darkness we were ill-equipped to handle, a darkness that would forever haunt our memories, a reminder of the price we paid for our curiosity. As I read, a chill crept over me, seemingly emanating from the corners of the room. I shook off the feeling, blaming it on the draft, and turned my attention back to the book. But then, a soft rustling reached my ears, like the whisper of fabric brushing against fabric. I looked up, my heart beginning to race, but the room was empty. Brushing off the unease once more, I resumed my reading, trying to convince myself that it was all in my head. But the chill persisted, and the rustling grew more distinct, a sound that seemed to come from just beyond the edges of my vision. My eyes darted around the room, searching for the source of the sound, but there was nothing to be seen. A sudden cold breeze swept through the room, ruffling the pages of my book. I shivered, my breath catching in my throat, as a voice, faint, ethereal, and laden with sorrow, whispered my name. My heart pounded as I looked around, my pulse quickening with each passing second. I was alone, the room empty except for the moonlight that filtered through the curtains. A feeling of dread settled in my chest as the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of ghostly voices that seemed to surround me. They spoke of forgotten memories, of long-lost loves, and of the weight of regrets that lingered beyond the realm of the living. Fear gripped me and I stood, my legs shaky as I backed away from the couch. And then, I saw it. A flicker of movement in the hallway, a shadow that seemed to materialize out of thin air. My breath caught in my throat as I watched, paralyzed as the figure grew more distinct. It was a figure dressed in old-fashioned clothing, its features blurred and yet somehow familiar. Its eyes, though hollow, bore into mine with a depth that sent shivers down my spine. The figure's voice, filled with an anguish that echoed through the ages, spoke of a life left unfinished, of promises broken, and of a yearning for closure. I stood frozen, unable to tear my gaze away, my heart a symphony of fear and curiosity. The chill in the air intensified, the temperature dropping to an almost unbearable degree. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure dissolved into the shadows, leaving behind an echoing silence that seemed to resonate in my very soul. The house was once again empty, the whispers fading into the night. As I stood there, my heart still racing, I realized that I had shared a moment with something beyond the living, a presence that had sought solace in the company of the lonely and the home alone. The decision to embark on a solo camping trip into the heart of the forest was one I made with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The promise of disconnecting from the hustle and bustle of modern life and immersing myself in nature's embrace was a siren's call that I couldn't resist. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the landscape, I set up camp beneath a canopy of towering trees, their branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. The crackling of the campfire was the only sound that broke the silence, and the scent of pine lingered in the air. As night fell, the forest came alive with the symphony of nocturnal creatures. It was a serene scene, one that seemed to exist in its own quiet world, far removed from the chaos of everyday existence. As I lay in my tent, cocooned in my sleeping bag, the darkness outside seemed to press against the fabric, and the rustling leaves whispered secrets that I strained to hear. The soft hooting of an owl resonated through the night, a haunting melody that danced between the trees. Alone with my thoughts, I felt a sense of vulnerability I hadn't expected. The isolation that had initially drawn me to this place now felt like a palpable presence, a reminder that I was a guest in a realm far older and more mysterious than I could comprehend. I listened to the symphony of the forest, the distant howl of a lone wolf, the hoot of an owl, and the rustle of creatures moving through the underbrush. With each sound, my heart skipped a beat, my imagination conjuring images of creatures lurking just beyond the edge of the fire's glow. A shiver ran down my spine as I recalled the tales of forest spirits and ancient beings that had been whispered around campfires for generations. In the stillness of the night, a chill ran down my spine as a twig snapped in the distance. I strained my ears, my heartbeat pounding in my chest. There it was again, a rustling, closer this time, accompanied by the soft padding of footsteps. My mind raced, my thoughts jumping to the predators that roamed these woods, the possibility of encountering something truly wild, untamed by human presence. I reached for the flashlight beside me and directed its beam toward the source of the sound. The light revealed a pair of glowing eyes, not the fierce gaze of a predator, but the curious, innocent eyes of a fox. It watched me for a moment, its orange fur illuminated in the beam of light before darting back into the shadows. A small smile tugged at the corners of my mouth as I realized how quick I was to assume the worst. As the night wore on, I found myself caught between moments of tranquility and unease. The forest symphony continued, each rustle and hoot a reminder of the life that teemed around me. The isolation that had felt suffocating earlier had transformed into a comforting solitude, a chance to connect with a world that existed beyond the confines of human existence. As dawn broke, I emerged from my tent to witness the forest coming to life once again. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor. I breathed in the crisp morning air, the worries and fears of the night fading with the darkness. Alone in the embrace of the trees, I realized that while the forest could be a place of solitude and mystery, it was also a sanctuary that held its own kind of magic, a magic that could only be unlocked by those willing to venture into its depths. As I packed up my campsite and began the hike back to civilization, a sense of contentment settled over me. The forest had challenged my assumptions, pushing me to confront my fears and embrace the unknown. It had taught me that solitude was not synonymous with loneliness, and that the beauty of nature's secrets could be as enchanting as they were intimidating. And as I left the forest behind, I carried with me a newfound appreciation for the quiet moments, the rustling leaves, and the distant calls of creatures that echoed through the night. The solitude among the trees had been a journey into the heart of the wild, a journey that left me humbled, awakened, and forever connected to the ancient rhythm of the natural world.